I'm really excited to be hosting this session called The Importance of Collaboration in Filmmaking. And I'm especially excited that we have this extraordinary panelists that are here. Beginning all the way at the end, I'd like to welcome Christopher Leps, director of Stuntman Off the Page.
Hey guys.
Darren Lynn Bousman, director, screenwriter, and 2011 Hall of Fame inductee. Hunter M. Vi, supervising film editor and 2014 Hall of Fame inductee.
Yeah.
Lynn Z, independent film and animation producer. And Matt Busch, independent filmmaker and concept designer. So, welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with all of us. I'd like to just start off with having you each talk a little bit about what you do in the film world and how it is that collaboration has worked really well for you in your work. So who would like to start? Do you want to start at the end, or does anyone want to jump in?
Go in order? Sure, we'll go in order. Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm a 21-year stuntman, a stunt professional for television and film, but filmmaking was always the end goal, and so I've been independent film writer, producer, and director for about the past 12. And so stunt work was sort of my film school, and through that, obviously used a lot of contacts and connections, and just made those relationships that I knew would one day hopefully pay off in my independent filmmaking, which it has. And as you all know, it's such a collaborative industry, and I've met so many great people over the years, and you gravitate towards each other and towards the projects that you're passionate about, and those help fuel your inspiration and your passion just to keep creating. So I think that's why we're all here, right?
Hey guys, Darren Lynn Bousman. Yeah, it's crazy. I always feel in every panel I go to, I'm a broken record because I just regurgitate the same information, and it's all about what we're here for right now. It's collaboration. I graduated with Hunter, who are actually in the same class, almost 15 years ago from the school. And through my relationships in Hollywood and through the kind of relationships I took from Full Sail, I was able to make a career for myself. And it is the people that I've surrounded myself with, the collaborative effort of filmmaking that's allowed me to have a career. Not that I'm super talented, I surround myself with super talented people. And because of that, I've made a couple of movies.
Yeah, the cutting room is, all filmmaking, on sets, the whole thing is just one big collaborative effort. And in the cutting room, I'm, by myself for large portions of the time, and then we get to work with, the producers and directors, and we work with all the post teams, and we collaborate with the composers, and it's just each person has their own little part that they kind of contribute, that they specialize in, and you hope that the next person beside you is going to add something awesome to it as well. And that's I don't know. It is not one person's thing. There's certainly auteurs that bring something new, and that you can certainly sense their work, but they really, everyone relies on all the different people that specialize in what they do to create the product.
Hi,
I don't know if that was coherent.
Good. I'm Lindsay. I kind of started with theater and puppetry primarily in my earlier days, and that has definitely helped me, and that's a huge collaboration effort too in theater. It's same as filmmaking, and now that we're into the independent film industry, it's huge. You do have to absolutely surround yourself with a great team of people at all times. And like he said, everyone's got their own job, which is very, very important that you do your job well and help each other out.
Hi, I'm Matt, and for me, my career started as an illustrator, and one of the reasons I first went into art and illustration, I wanted to get into movies and I wanted to get into music, but I wasn't able to find a group of people that I could surround myself with that were as passionate as I was. And so after a bunch of dead ends, it didn't seem like they were going anywhere. The one thing I did like about art and illustration was I was in charge of my own destiny, and I didn't have to rely on anyone. But then moving out to Los Angeles and starting to work in film, started meeting more professionals, and not just people who were good at their profession, but just people on the inside that were just very passionate good people to work with that had great attitudes. And I said this yesterday, it's the best advice I've ever gotten ever. It was given to me by my mom when I was a teenager, and my mom's kind of hokey, and so I rolled my eyes when I heard it as a teenager. But Full Sail University tweeted it yesterday. I couldn't believe it. And that advice is, if you want to soar like an eagle, don't hang around turkeys. And it's good stuff, Mom. Thanks.
I think we can end the session right now. That's good. Good stuff. So thank you guys for that. There were several things that you guys said that inspired some questions for me. But the first one, Hunter, coming back to what you were saying about an auteur, I think it's really important to talk about that a little bit, what that means. And, obviously auteur is the French word for author, and the idea behind it is a filmmaker that's able to keep a cohesive vision that is something that's recognizable in their films, even though it's such a collaborative process. So just quick to get us all on the same page with what auteur means. But I wanted to hear from you guys your thoughts on how is it that you can keep that unique vision when you have so many different parts, and then when it goes awry, when the visions collide.
In my experience, I've been very lucky to work with people like Darren, who clearly has a vision and his own unique way of looking at things and ways of shooting and telling stories. And also Frank Darabont, and the TV shows that I've been on are also primarily driven by one very strong person whose idea and vision it is to do this. And in my experience, what's really great about that is that they've been very collaborative. They trust that you bring something to the table, and that they trust that you're gonna, that you're decent at your job at all the different departments. But what they do that really helps is they plant a flag for everybody. They say that's where we're going, and that everybody can work as a team to take the project there. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to talk about that idea of trying to maintain a unified vision within the collaborative process?
I think it's hard because for someone like myself who's a writer and director, you sit in a room by yourself and you have a blank page and you write words on a blank page, and then some years later you get in a set and you have to point a camera at something and film something. But the reality is this, you need and rely on all the people that you've surrounded yourself with to be able to see that vision realized. But the reality is this, I am not infallible as a writer and director. In fact, some of my best ideas were not my ideas whatsoever. They came from the editor or the production designer or the makeup or costumes. Now, I'll steal them and I'll say, yeah, I meant to do it like that. But the reality is this, is that I don't know how many times I have been saved by other people in their departments catching things or bringing their own artistic thing into it. Production design is a huge thing. It can change a movie, and that someone, again, comes in with their own unique vision. So I've been very lucky with hiring and working with great artists that bring their art into it. And that's the only way that I think films really get made, is that you have to trust the people you've hired. If you don't trust the people you've hired, it becomes this weird, unfun place to work. Because what's the purpose of going to set and doing this if you're basically mandated it has to be like this? Then you become a button pusher. And I didn't get into filmmaking to be a button pusher.
I love that. I love that it's so true that the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and definitely when you're able to listen to what other people say, you can make something better than even you could have imagined. And I think it takes humility to be able to see that. I think what the problem comes in when people get really stuck in their particular ways. So that's what we hear when we hear people say creative differences. So my next question is, you can have the best director, best writer, everything perfect, and the movie or show is incredible. And then you can have the same situation and the movie or show is terrible. So there's some sort of thing that happens that can go right or wrong in a collaborative process. And I think that Darren just spoke on when it can go well, when you get inspired, and when people, but can you guys speak on that? What do you think that's about? Or how do you think that you can create the positive side versus the negative side?
I can tell you the reverse side of that as well, very, very much, is I think that and the same thing about trust. If there have been situations where there is no trust on set, and an example, a movie comes out, the edit comes out, and people try to fix the edit, meaning that they look at the art you've created and said, no, we have to make this more mainstream. And so they try to shift and change the art that was done. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and then sometimes you get movies that, again, from the same filmmakers that are unwatchable, that are terrible. And I think that's, so there's the opposite side of the trust thing where they don't trust, and when they start second guessing, you end up with things that you're not proud of and don't work.
Yeah, when it all kind of falls apart, and also like trying to make something into what it was never intended to be, which is what I think Darren was getting at there. Like when, you set out and you shoot a scene or a whole episode or a movie and it goes one direction, and it's not having the ability to sit back and say, okay, I don't have what I envisioned in my head when we set out to do this, but this is what we have now, and that's okay that it's different, and having the confidence to embrace that and to go with it, and that's usually when you end up with the projects that go really well, because people are, kind of go with it. There's multiple different, there's the version of the movie that was, written, there's the version that was directed, and then there's the version that's edited and then finally released. It kind of goes through all the different phases.
Yes,
it's
go ahead.
interesting when you guys, building upon that, I mean, for me, when I write, I sort of anticipate and actually look forward to how much better it's going to be on set when all of that life, all the breath is into it, because the actors are going to take what's on the page and make it their own. The cinematographer is going to, work his magic as well. So all those things come together, and I actually look forward to that process. And I think that when things go wrong, often it's when you try to structure that and when you try to sort of plan that. And it's interesting because this is an artistic, creative business, right? But in many ways, especially at the studio level, the business of art has become the art of business. There's a lot of money riding on these films, and so you have a lot of very powerful, wealthy people that want to put their thumbprint on it, or at least add their input to where they feel will make the film better or more successful. And so while that can often pay off, a lot of times, kind of what Hunter was talking about, is it doesn't, because you try to structure that and say, here's where we think this should be, and it changes and sort of twists and turns the art from what it was originally intended to be. So
It's the casserole effect, which I call it in the edit room, is that if there are too many cooks in the kitchen and you're trying to make a casserole and you're making like a corn casserole, and then all of a sudden someone comes in and says, you know what, I like the corn casserole, but you know what I really like is celery. Let's put some celery in there. And then someone else says, you know what, I want something sweet. Let's throw some sugar in there. And someone else is like, you know what, I like chocolate. We're putting chocolate in there. And then you got someone else said, let's put some radishes in there. And all of a sudden, you've got this disgusting shit that no one's going to eat. And sometimes you have to smile and take it, because he said the thumbprint. One of the worst things as a filmmaker is that people love this business, and they all are inspired by it and have a great time when they're involved. And then they sometimes want to put their thumbprint on things, meaning that they've been hands off for a year of the process. And at the very end, they want to come in and say, I want to do something that I can point to and say, I did that. And that, to me, is the most frustrating part of the filmmaking process. Is, let's say you have an edit, and someone wants to save the edit. And they want to come in, and they want to say, you know what? That scene, let's get rid of it. The movie's going to work so much better without it. Not because they really believe the movie's going to work better without it, because they want to be able to point to the movie at a later date and say, I saved that movie. I got rid of that bad scene.
You should have seen how bad it was before.
Yeah.
I just marked it.
Right.
And it is a enraging thing, and that's where it's a fine line about collaboration and standing up for what you believe in and having a singular voice. Because the thing you could end up happening is so many different people are trying to add their flavors to your casserole, it's going to be unedible. And so you, as a filmmaker and artist, have to stand up and say, no, that's not the thing we're making. And I think that's where it's a weird kind of, it's like a weird thing between collaboration and standing up for what you believe in. But that thumbprint thing that's what, to me, is the worst part of the filmmaking process, is the people that come in to save a movie at the very end.
And often what they're removing, they lack the intimacy with the material. And while it is often dangerous to be too close to the material, obviously I think it's far more dangerous to be removed from the material. So if they don't have this relationship and this closeness to the material, and they come in, as Darren said, at the end, they go, oh, let's just remove this, or let's add that. Well, wait a minute, that affects 40 minutes ago when this story element happened, when this character was on this journey, and it really becomes very ugly very quickly. But I think in the independent realm, at least, the nice thing is that often you gravitate towards and the people that, like Darren said, it's a singular vision, and the people that have a passion for the work are going to gravitate towards your project, and then what you want to do is align yourself with like-minded individuals so that you're constantly serving the story, not the product, not the grosses, not the advertising. You're serving the story so that the story can be the best it can be, and then it grows from there. And I think you have to have that trust, and hopefully you're with a good collaborative team that allows that to happen.
Yeah.
Another thing on that, the flip side of that I would say is whenever you've got a project, no matter how big or how small, everyone usually involved is creative, everyone has ideas, everyone wants to put their thumbprint on. Most people aren't going to get to have that thumbprint on there. And so you really have to develop a thick skin and understand, even if you've got this idea that you think would be so great, and you're working, for Disney, and when they make Aladdin, man, Abu would have been so much better as a zebra. They wanted a monkey, and oh my God, if it was a zebra, it would have been amazing. They didn't do it, and then you get upset because they didn't use a zebra. But you got to have a thick skin, and when they don't use your ideas, they're not shutting you down, and it's not that they don't like you or you suck or something like that. It's just that they didn't use your idea, and move on and try to do the best you can to continue to support what the overall project is.
I remember I was making a movie called Repo the Genetic Opera, and it's a weird rock and roll musical. And I was kind of in hot water at the time I was making the movie, and I was starting to be branded difficult. And I walked into the movie and I said, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever's asked of me. I'm not gonna make this difficult. And you go into a first meeting and you get pitched, we don't think there should be music in it. So let's just do the story, but let's just get rid of the music for a minute. And I started to bite my tongue, and then you start realizing that collaboration could backfire if it's not the right team. And you're right, it should be serving the story, because at that point, you do get labeled difficult, but in the same thing, you have to stick to your vision. If you start deviating from that, imagine if someone told Frank Miller in Sin City, yeah, we get it, but let's not go with that stylized approach of the black and white. Let's go with something a little more mainstream. It wouldn't have been Sin City. If Pulp Fiction, if they had said to Quentin Tarantino, we get it, but let's not tell it out of order. That's going to confuse people. Let's put it in a linear narrative order. At some point, pardon my French, you got to say F you, fuck you guys. No, this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. But the danger is again, I am fallible. I've made many mistakes. And so without people like Hunter calling me out and being like, dude, that's bad. That's a terrible thing you're doing. So again, it's a fine line of finding the balance of sticking to your guns and your belief, and also realizing you could be wrong in the beliefs that you have.
That's actually an interesting point, because we get to collaborate in a different way, I think, than I do with other people, because you and I actually have known each other for 15 years. We learned how to do this together at school. And there are times when, we throw,
Yeah.
we actually will yell at each other in the cutting room sometimes. But
you walked out a couple times. You got mad a couple times.
only once.
Well, okay.
But
You're doing something wrong if that doesn't happen.
But it's having that dialogue, no matter if you're close or not close. It's having that trust with the other people in order to know that the idea that you're bringing is worthwhile and that it's going to help out, and the other person trusting you to listen to it and to consider it, whether they take it or not.
Right.
And in our case, we a little bit more open because of that.
Lindsay,
Yeah.
you've got to deal with that, I was going to say, in the animation realm.
Yeah, well, and actually, just the other day, because we're the same way, we have a very similar relationship to you two, where we're constantly giving each other feedback back and forth. And we were just trying to color correct our film the other day, and he has me look at it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, okay. He's like, looks good, right? Yeah, okay, maybe, right? I'm gentle, I'm a girl, I try to be cautious with that sort of stuff. But anyway, so I'm treading lightly, and I'm like, yeah, maybe that's a little too red, bump the blues a little bit, and yeah, maybe that's a little, geez, we'll just change the whole thing, right? So yeah, but we collaborate, and it works out well. Everything turns out good in the end, but.
Well, it sounds like one of the things that you guys are all saying is that you certainly can't be afraid of conflict in filmmaking, because part of collaborating is also having moments where you'll possibly disagree, and in those cases it can get better. There's also cases like it can become the disgusting casserole, but there's cases where you can make something really incredible from maybe some of that conflict and not taking it personally.
Darren actually makes a really nice corn casserole.
I really do. It's delicious. I think it's all about a level of trust in deciding who you surround yourself with. And I think that if you look at If you look at my films, for example, I use the same people. I use the same actors. I use the same few editors, the same few DPs, and even the same producers producing the same stuff. And that's because I feel safe. I don't think they're going to let me fail. They're a safety net for you. And I think that it's about finding those people you trust in, that you know that, again, I have a unique voice, and I surrounded myself with people that understand that voice and have the same weird, unique voice that I do. The worst thing I could have done is try to hire a producer that hates musicals, and I'm trying to make a musical. That I'm setting myself up for failure. So you try to surround yourself with people that, again, as you said, share the same ideas, but will call you out on your shit. If I make a bad choice, I want the freedom of someone to be able to say, dude, that's bad, and let me hear why it's bad. I might disagree with you and in the very end veto that, but I think it's important to have people that are not scared to come up and say to you, you're making the wrong choice right here.
Well, I think, yeah, you guys definitely touched on this. Because rejection is such a large part of this business, that, you have to be prepared for that, because it's subjective. It's opinion-based. You're throwing your creative work out there for many people to judge. And I think the one thing to avoid is, because rejection is such a large part of it, you want to surround yourself with supportive people, right? But the last thing you want is yes people, because you don't want someone stroking you and saying everything you're doing is great. Just like you guys said, you want people that are going to be supportive, because support is not unconditional. It's, hey, I'm not going to let you fail. I don't want you to fail. We are on the same page, and I try to surround myself. And the nice thing is that if you let it happens naturally. That the people that are in your circle, your creative circle, will tell you exactly what they think of it. And it's a level of respect, and it's a level of honesty that you say, okay. And that's where the fun of the filmmaking comes from, because you have those creative battles, And battle is not a bad word. You need that, because you're constantly trying to improve yourself, your stories, anything that you're putting out for others. And again, ultimately, no matter how good that process goes, it's still subjective, but at least you're all on the same page. You're working towards creating the best film or television show or piece of music that you can.
I think that one of the points that a few of you have brought up that I think is really important for the students to hear is the fact that you'll use the same people over and over again, the ones that you trust and the ones that you feel supported by. And I've heard this a couple times today. And I think that that's really important, is that you don't burn bridges, and that you make sure that you give it 100% each time you're there. And that, yeah, you're speaking up when you believe something's different, but that you're supporting and that you're giving everything, because potentially you could be hired by the same people for 10 years, 20 years, for a long time.
I'm still working with people that I met on my first job. Right now, I'm working on a show, and the showrunner was a writer on The Shield in 2001, I guess. So, I mean, it's very small, and you continue to work with this. Hopefully, if you're lucky, you get to continue working with the same people over and over again. I mean, the business is hard enough as it is, with you're always scrambling for the next job and doing all that kind of stuff. So if you can make your life a little bit easier by working with people that are predictable, you know how they work, you know what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, it's really, really helpful, just to have one more little piece of it that kind of just lines up automatically. Because each time you start something up, it's like it's different. There's a new system, there's new people involved, there's new politics, there's new something. So being able to bring along the same people that you already trust really is helpful. It's really nice.
So, all right, we have this idea of people coming in with different visions and understanding that it's a really fine line between how is it that you collaborate and work with people, but also how do you stand up for your vision? There are people that are known as being, the divas or the really difficult ones to work with, and they make incredible things, and people still want to work with them. How do you, can you guys speak to that? What do you think that's about? Do you work with anyone like that? Would you work with people like that? Or do you think that that's not actually true? That in the end, most people that work frequently are easygoing and get along with people?
I don't think most people are. I think in that case, you would want to do that because you'd be pushed creatively. You would learn something new, That would be the challenge to jump on something like that.
A story that was told to me, or a piece of advice that was given to me by one of the producers of the Saw films. He said, you can be the nicest guy in Hollywood, the nicest guy, and if your movie doesn't make money, no one's going to return your calls and you're gone. You can be the biggest diva and asshole, but if you're constantly turning in money, the phone calls aren't going to stop. And that's very correct in a way. Now, do I condone being a diva? Absolutely not. That's horrible. No one should be in a situation like that. But the reality is it's a business. We are in the entertainment business, and you can't think of the most important word of that as business. It has to make money. If it doesn't make money, you're making, like, you're doing it for yourself. And I've made a lot of movies for myself, I have. But the reality is, if you want to have a long career, it's all about the business side of things. And so it comes down to, is your art profitable?
So, for example, something like El Mariachi, was made for $7,000, and every single person that was acting in it was also crewing it. So it was incredibly collaborative, because it had to be. Can you guys speak a little bit about the nature of, and again, somebody kind of spoke to this a little bit, which is the difference between collaboration in independent film versus a studio film, and just kind of talking about that a little bit.
Well, I can say definitely on an independent film, it's a smaller scale thing that isn't going to make as much profit, but being able to retain vision and having a team that's very passionate is very exciting. But there's pros and cons to both. Having worked on larger pictures where I was just doing concept art or storyboarding. That's great too, but if I have a movie like I don't know, like The Matrix or something like that, it's not like I can hold up a DVD and say, "Check out my movie, The Matrix." I'm one little name at the end of the movie. There it goes. But that's also very cool, They're two completely different birds. One, in the larger scope, the work that I've done, I basically had a job that I had to do. And then where I run my own ship, that's where I get to run free and play, and hopefully those become successful as well. That's my thing.
Yeah, definitely obviously on independent films, those lines, those role descriptions are blurred. And again, a lot of times that can lead to some really great collaboration. It's interesting because on the larger studio films, they aren't blurred at all. It's very specific, and there's a person for every single job, and that's where those large budgets can often benefit, because you have an army of people that are creating this work, and every job is covered. On an independent set, people are sometimes doing 2 or 3 things, and one of my producers was also craft service, and she was fantastic at both. And I told her, I was like, we ate so well. I'd almost rather have you on that role, but she's also so creative on that end of things. So it's interesting. Again, it's about aligning yourself with like-minded individuals whose egos can be, checked at the door, or better yet, not at all, and will really do whatever it takes to get the project done, especially on an independent level, when the money is, every single penny is allocated towards something, whether it's, equipment or, post-production or whatever. And so it's the people that are going to be able to jump back and forth and wear those multiple hats that often, and so good at what they do across the board. That is incredibly enjoyable at that level.
Well, my experience has been mostly on union projects where it's very regimented on what everyone's title is, and everyone has. There we go. I think everyone has like their own very specific duty, and if you were to jump in, you would actually be like, kicked off.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, that's not your union. Drop it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny. Like, if you were to try to help out, that was outside of your parameters, you would actually get in trouble. But you want to find people, though, that you work with at least that are creative and do wear multiple hats, at least within that area. And with me specifically, in the cutting room, we do a lot with music, we do a lot with visual effects, we do a lot with, and actually editing all of that stuff together and doing temp visual effects. And so while we technically aren't doing, outside of our field and jumping and doing 2 or 3 things, you do look for somebody that can grab, a big basket of stuff is in their toolkit.
Multitask in that specific discipline, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I guess it depends on the budget, whether or not you need people that can do 50 things or not. Right, absolutely. So one of the things that you brought up is about, surrounding yourself with people. Well, lots of people have brought this up, but surrounding yourself with greatness or people that are wonderful. Well, I just want you guys to give students advice. What can they do to be, I guess, the eagles instead of the turkeys in your scenario?
I think that the first thing you can do is don't talk about doing it, just do it. And it's been my mantra since coming back to Full Sail from the very beginning, is that there's two groups of people in Hollywood, and I'm sure in everywhere, but it's the people that talk about all these things they're going to do. I'm going to make a short film. I'm going to write a script. I'm going to produce a movie. And then there's people that just go do it. And I'm not saying you're going to be successful if you just go do it, but you immediately set yourself up. Instead of talking about being a producer, you are a producer. Instead of talking about being a director, you are a director. And then I think what that does is you separate yourself from 50% of the other people. Those other 50% that talk about it fall to the bottom, and you're left with 50% that have risen to the top. And then of those 50% that's risen from the top, you guys all share something. You have something in common. You guys are doers as opposed to talkers. And then cherry pick of those doers. Who's most likely? Who's your editor you're going to continue to work with? Who's your cinematographer? Who is your producer? And I think that that's the first thing I would do is, don't surround yourself with dead weight. And I think that it can be toxic, if you surround yourself with the wrong people this early on. And that's why I think Hunter and I clicked so well in film school. There was a bunch of us that basically one afternoon said, we're going to move to LA. And we didn't talk about it. We got in a car and we moved to LA. We're going to make a film. And we didn't talk about it. We went and made a film. And I think that if you look, the people that said this are where we are right now and have careers, as opposed to our classmates who are really talented people, but sat around and talked about it. And so I think that as advice, that's one of the biggest things I would say to you.
Absolutely. That's perfect advice, because it's action based. If you take action, anyone can sit and, I've seen colleagues that had production meetings, and you would have thought that they were about to make the next, whatever, $100 million film. And that went nowhere because talk is cheap. Everyone can talk about an idea. And I think what Darren said, it puts such a fine point on it. Start with the action. Get that ball rolling. And the people that you will probably end up at least potentially collaborating with are those who are going to join you in that action. They're not going to say, hey, well, I could do this for you, or if that gets going, I could do this for you. They're going to come to you and say, hey, I know that you started your film, and I went ahead and did this, whether it's I looked into some locations for you, or I got in touch with the casting director, and she knows this representative that can get us in touch with this. I mean, those, you're like, wait a minute, what? You're doing it, you're being...
I would say attitude is key, absolutely. And like these guys are saying, go out and do it. Well, have the attitude and the positivity to believe that you can do it, because nobody else is going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic advice, and you can start being a credible person right now, even without if you don't have the credentials under your belt, just being someone that does what, becoming a person of your word, and being that person that when you say you're going to do something, people know you're not messing around. How many people do you guys know that, they say they're going to do something, and then, a year later, after they didn't do it, they said, oh, I'm going to start a record company. And then a year later, oh, I'm going to make this movie. And then it gets to a point, you're like, what is it this time? Yep, they're not going to do that either. You don't want to be one of those people. You want to be one of those people that when you say you're going to do something, everyone knows, oh, wow, I want to get on that. That's cool. They don't mess around. They're a person of their word.
I was just thinking about this when you were talking about, saying attitude's really important. My last few films that I've done, I would rather hire someone out of film school in a higher position than a person that has credits 10 miles long, because the people with 10 miles long, and this comes from an independent mentality, I would rather have someone that's eager and excited and passionate and confident and wants to prove something than someone that's has those credits that are smaller than this. That's just going to give me just enough. And so I was just thinking that I realized that the people in this last film I've worked with were a lot of first-time people, and now I'm going to hire those people again and again and again because of the attitude and the passionate thing. Passion to me is more important than credits. I will look at your passion over your resume.
And it's contagious.
It is.
That passion, everyone around them will come to life because of it. Like, you have one person that's like that and brings that energy to everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, and especially something that we get feedback about all of our Full Sail grads is that they don't go into work with an attitude. Like they show up early and they work really, really hard, and that's and of course having that passion and excitement to do it, that's really important. Just never having that attitude. I think that's a really good one. So with collaboration, sometimes there can be some competition. Have you guys ever experienced that? On set? Or?
Well, it's on my very first short film. I was interviewing a few directors of photography, and it was funny because a lot of the male DPs that I was interviewing, they also wanted to be directors, and we would talk about the vision, and they were very excited, which is fantastic, but they were sort of warping it into what I felt more was their style. And, you know, again, going back to sort of that original, the most pure form of collaboration, and how we've been speaking this whole time on, everyone has their role and how you want to excel in that role so that that avenue or that aspect of the film really shines, and that's where a lot of the creativity and the magic is made. So I actually went with a female director of photography because that was her passion. She wanted to be a director of photography. She had no interest in directing. And it was such a, but the irony is that I used far more of her ideas than I ever thought I would, because she was all about just the cinematography and about supporting the story through the use of camera as a tool, which it should be. And so much more, again, it was about that excitement. Just as when you write, you expect things are going to be better on the day. She took it to a different level that I hadn't anticipated. And it was so exciting because it was ego-free. There weren't many arguments. So on the day. But again, the battles that we did have only made the project better. And things can definitely go wrong when actually the danger of what the last question we discussed is how you do take action and people will gravitate towards you. It's very hard to be sometimes the initial motivator that gets something going. So that when people do see movement and they want to jump on board, now the hard part's done, right? Now they can sort of get in there and add their vision or their direction for the project. So things can go wrong for sure. And again, it's I don't know that you can put a formula or structure it in any way, and just again, just try to align yourself with those people that you see potential in, that have the right attitude and the creativity to deliver. And hopefully, it'll all come together.
And I think one of the things that one of you was saying is that, you can spend time alone, let's say if you're writing or coming up with ideas, and I think it's really empowering when you can suddenly realize that there's all these other people that can fit in this to help you, that you can work together, that have skills that maybe you don't have, that can edit really well or have a really clear vision for lighting and cinematography, and that if you partner up with the people that have the skills that you don't have, that together you'll be able to do something that's far greater than you could have ever done by yourself. But there's letting go in that.
I realized when leaving Full Sail that for me, it became a very selfish thing, but all of our selfishness helped each other in the way that I wanted to make a movie. I wanted to direct something. I needed to direct something in the same way that Hunter needed to edit something, which is in the same way that our cinematographer needed something for his demo reel. So we were all acting for ourselves. It was this guy needed an amazing cinematography thing. This other person needed a producing credit. Hunter needed an editing thing. I needed a directing thing. And so our necessity, our need, inspired each other. And at that point, there wasn't really competition in that way because we all wanted the same thing and we wanted the best version as a calling card for ourselves. And I think that's it, is that find someone that's as desperate as you are, literally. And that's, how I got Saw 2 was I wrote a script called The Desperate, and it was about that exact thing, desperation. And I think that it's great is that you guys are you're in a facility right now where everyone's aspiring to be something in the entertainment market. Partner right now, find the collaborations right now. And I think that as desperate or as passionate, let's say passionate as you are as about making a movie, someone's the same way about their images, cinematography. Someone's the same way about editing. And you're in the perfect fishbowl of place that you can find these people right now.
It's totally symbiotic. It's true. You need something out of it. It's like, hey, I want to direct. Oh, you want to produce? Oh, great. Let's come together and serve each other's needs as well as our own. So exactly. This is the epicenter for symbiotic.
You're never going to find a crew like this that's ready to go that has so much to gain from it. I mean, that's the thing. It's fantastic.
So I see a lot of the students at BTS when everybody first comes in, and if I say, what does everybody want to be? Everybody raises their hand and says, director. And then I see them at graduation. And it's so different. You see the person who just became the producer, you see the director, you see the editor, you see the animator, you see special effects. It's incredible but I do think that there's a way that you have to start to be realistic about your gifts and what you can do, what you love, and see where you fit into the whole thing, and know that each piece of it is just as valuable as the other, and that each layer is another layer of storytelling. It's not just one person is telling the story. Each layer is retelling that story, in a different and unique way. So you guys have shared a lot of amazing things about finding people that you trust, be passionate, action, make sure that you're listening and that there's a clear vision, but that you work well with each other. And I just wanted to turn it over to the audience to see if you guys had any questions that you wanted to ask them. Oh, we have lots of questions. So you want to start here in the front, and then we'll move over to you. I don't think that mic is on. We need to collaborate with a sound person.
We'll repeat it. What's your question? I'll
Yeah.
repeat it.
When it comes to a producer, how active are they on set or in the cutting room?
So when it comes to a producer, how active are they on set and in the cutting room? It's different. You know, I've worked with some producers that are very, very hands-on. They're every step of the way, from the minute of inception through the minute it airs the first time. There are other producers that I've worked with that literally set up a project. You guys agree on the script, and they say, "Great, we'll see you in 10 weeks after your editor's cut." So it's completely different. Most of it is. Every time I do a movie, I have a lot riding on it. As a filmmaker, as a director, as an artist, I have a lot riding on it. A producer has as much because they have financial. I mean, think about it. A lot of movies cost lots of money. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars. A producer's responsibility is to oversee the entire process. So they're on the line for a lot. So, you know, in my experience, producers are around quite a bit to ensure the overall quality of the movie, to make sure I'm not going off the rails. And, you know, imagine if I decided on Saw 3 I wanted to turn that into a musical and add Jigsaw songs. They would not have liked that. And so that's what their responsibility is as well, is to make sure that we're sticking with the program, we're sticking with the script that we talked about doing. So, I mean, they're there a lot.
Yeah, and TV is a producer's medium versus a director's medium. So the producers there are very hands-on. They're not always on set. I mean, there's a producer on set, but not normally like the show running producer is not usually there, or could be, but they're very involved in the cutting room now.
Yeah, I was David Anders' stunt double on Alias, and I think, there was a handful of producers on that show, and they each had in their contract that they directed a couple of episodes. And so it wasn't just the episodes that they were working on. When they were off an episode, they still had a creative hand in it. So it would, like you said, television is a producer's realm. I mean, across the board, they constantly keep that season going from a creative, financial, administrative standpoint. It's incredible in that realm.
Yes.
What are some red flags that we shouldn't collaborate with somebody? And can it be dangerous to work with the same people? Oh, it works. Can it be dangerous to work with the same people over and over again?
So the first part of her question was, are there any particular red flags that you should be looking at about why not to collaborate with someone? And then did everyone hear the second?
What's your name?
Cassie.
Cassie, what do you want to do?
Direct, and I'm falling in love with DP.
All right. So looking at either of those, directing or DP, I think you need to know what your voice is. No one can tell you what your voice is. No one can say to you, this is what you should shoot and this is the stories you should tell. So I would never collaborate on someone telling me what my vision is. I figure that out on my own. I say, this is the vision of the movie that I want to make. This is the style of what I want to make. Once you have that in your head and once you know what that is, then you go in and you present that idea to the production designer or the cinematographer or the producer or the editor. Then you're able to let them throw their ideas in. What I wouldn't do is say, get with a group of people if I wanted to be a director and say, I want to direct something, so let's all figure it out. And because by doing that, you're minimizing the artistic process, in my opinion, because part of me being a director or a filmmaker is I have a vision and a voice, and I want to put that out in the world. So my advice on that, and I'm sure everyone has different, and I would like to hear the other teams on it. I would say that the first step of it is an individual step for me when it comes to writing or directing. And then once I have something that I feel good about, I share it and let those people add their 2 cents into it. And then I realize where I'm flawed, where my vision is flawed, where my artistic ideas are flawed, and let them come in and make this better. And that's what it is. You want to make it better. And so the idea by bringing more people in is the more people you bring in and they add their expertise into it, they're going to make it better.
I mean, as far as the second part of that question about is it dangerous to work with the same people too much? Yes, because in my opinion, I would say, and we talked about this actually on the last panel a little bit, in you want to have as open of a network as possible, and if you're constantly working with the exact same people, one, just to keep working and all of that, but also to have more influences come in, right, to make you better at what you do, to be challenged in new ways. And as far as red flags for, I don't know, I mean, just making sure that if it's somebody that just personality-wise, I mean, I think so much of it is personality, and I think that you would know that.
Yeah, often the red flags are obvious. Because, I mean, if, you'll know right away what they are in many cases, just because, it starts in your gut. And you're like, something's fishy here.
Yeah, you
Always trust your gut.
Yeah, you sit down for coffee or something before, if you've never been on something with somebody the first time, you do that outside before you start working, and you'll know pretty quickly,
Yeah.
like, no.
No.
And I think it was a great question, and some people said, if you can't trust them, if they're abusive in some way, things like that, and definitely trusting your gut if they don't let you do your vision, create your vision. Do you guys want to add?
Well, I would say definitely we kind of mentioned also credibility. So if you have someone on the team that continually is not coming through on things that they're saying that they're going to come through on, obviously that's something you wouldn't want to work with again. And I'd say there's pluses and minuses with working with the same people over and over again. The good is you have the strength of what you guys are used to, but I'd say it's also good every now and then to get new people in to put you guys on your toes and to challenge you and to evolve as well. So there's pros and cons to both, for sure.
Having a person on your team that challenges you, I think, is key. You need a little spice with your sugar, right? Because sometimes that friction together works really, really well, and they might take it from a completely different angle that you just did, and you guys come up with something even better together.
As much as I would love to work with a team that just agrees with everything that I say and like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. Oh, that's a good one too. I mean, obviously two heads are better than one, and I want to be challenged. And if we can make the project better, even if it wasn't I'd love it for all of it to be my idea, but I have to put that aside. And ultimately I want the best, product I can make, and it doesn't have to be all my ideas, for sure.
Challenge is a great word, because if you feel too comfortable, that breeds complacency. And then again, like you guys said, you're not being challenged, and it should be a challenge. It's a challenge to create and to constantly, make those incredible projects that are going to inspire others. And I mean, every filmmaker says it. We make the types of films that we want to see, and I think that's the most pure form of inspiration, and where it all builds from there. But look, just like everyone else says, it has its pros and cons, because if you're too safe, if you're too comfortable, and you're constantly, producing the same type of material, then, your audience is either going to let you know, or it might happen within your creative team that, gosh, are we doing the type of work that we want to be doing that's really inspiring us? Are we challenged anymore? So that's a great point.
Yeah. Without the friction, you can't make the pearl inside the little.
Hi, my name is Michael, and my question was, we try to create a family when we're working together on a project. Now, is there any tricks each of you have to creating that family dynamic, that feeling of excitement, making everyone feel valuable so that they do feel more collaborative when you do have to say once in a while yes, sometimes no, but is there a trick to the way you do it so that you feel like everybody, you can make them feel part of a family?
I think it's respecting everyone, even if they're a PA or if they're a producer. It's having respect for everyone. I mean, I started as a PA, and I remember that when I was working on X-Files, and I walked up to the director at the time, and he completely blew me off. And he goes, "What do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a PA." And he scoffed at me and walked away. And I remembered, you asshole. If I ever make it, and so I think it starts with respecting everyone, and respect, because everyone starts at the bottom. Very few people start at the top. And so you realize that the people now at the bottom will be to the top. And I can tell you right now, people that when I started off as directing, that were assistants, are now running studios. And so I think it starts there. But you know what? We're lucky. We get to have fun. We get to make music and make worlds and make characters and make pretty images. It's awesome. It's like a giant sandbox we get to play in. So it shouldn't be, I try to keep, I would say it works about 75% of the time. Obviously it gets stressful, but sets should be fun. I've been on some sets that there's a black cloud when you walk in and it just feels tense.
They're fear-driven.
It is, and I mean, I try to make it fun, and like, it's maybe, I don't know. This is an awesome profession we're in, and so the minute it stops being fun, I'm in the wrong profession, and so my thing is just try to keep it light. We're not curing cancer. We're making movies. We're telling stories, and I think it should be fun.
I've got a good thing that I've learned, or that I learned a year ago. Actually, Rick Veers, inductee this year, taught me this. And so for the independent movie that we're shooting now, anytime someone has an idea, and there's times all the time on set where someone on the crew will be like, hey, it'd be really neat if, maybe try shooting it like this, or maybe it'd be better if they say this. Usually 99% of the time in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, that's a lame idea. There's no way I'm going to use that. But Rick said, you know what? When someone has an idea, if it's not too much trouble, if it doesn't take too long to do, shoot it that way. Just do one quick take and try to do that. That way the crew feels like at least you listen to their idea, you're taking it into account. And even though in my head I'm still thinking, never going to use it. But I got to say, there's actually been a few times in the editing room trying to put it together where, you know what? Oh my gosh, that idea actually, I'm glad I filmed it, because that actually did. I don't want to admit it, but that actually, when everything's together, that's what worked. That does work. So, but that's a good, and to try to make everyone feel included, that's something that I think has worked out great for us.
So that's a great, I like that. That's a great point. Does anyone else? Oh, right here on the right. He's coming down if you want to wait one quick second.
My name's Joshua. How often do you guys rely on assistant directors, and how much a part of that do you rely on them?
I mean, for me, the assistant director is everything. And I didn't realize I guess I didn't realize the scope of their job or what they actually did. When I heard the name before I came to Full Sail, before I went to Hollywood, assistant director, I thought they actually assisted the directing of the shots or whatever like that. They run the set. They control the set. They are responsible for if you make your day or your movie falls apart. They basically force me to focus. I'm not a focused person. I have a million ideas going at any given time, and I'm a hard person because I don't have tunnel vision. I'm like everywhere at once. They force me to see in a straight line and see how I'm going to get the day. I'm going to get the shots. I'm going to tell the story. Good assistant directors make great movies, but a movie can fall apart with a bad assistant director. Bad planning, because movies are made in pre-production. That's where they're made. Very rarely do I go on set, and there's been times that I go on set and I'm creative, but majority of the time, the movie is done before I ever walk on set. I go on set with a book. This is the book. I go on set with the book, and in it is the shots that I want to do, the storyboards that I want, and what I want to get out of each scene. That's done months in advance, and that's planned with the AD. So for me, I mean, he or she, in fact, most of them have been female assistant directors I've worked with, are critical.
How much rehearsing do you do with your actors?
Very little, and that's just not because I don't want to, because the movies that I've done are very quick movies, independent films. So we don't have that flexibility. I mean, in the last film I did, we cast our lead actor the day before we started filming, and so they show up, and it's just like, bam, go. I remember when we did one of the Saw films, we got Donnie Wahlberg on Saw 2 like 2 days before we started filming. And in some cases, we're actually filming the movie before we get the person that plays that next day. So very, very little have I done actually rehearsal. On Repo, we actually rehearsed for a week and a half, 2 weeks before. But I think it was the only movie I've ever actually had real rehearsal days.
That kind of mandated it, right? Since it was a musical, you needed to.
Well, on Devil's Carnival and Repo, we actually recorded the music months in advance. When that was a weird movie because the performances, Repo, there was no talking; it was all singing. So their performances were made 3 or 4 months before we ever stepped on set, and that was a crazy thing because, those spur of the moment ideas you do have, you're relegated to the performance you recorded in a studio 3 months before. But on the other feature films, on the narrative, non-singing movies, there's very little rehearsal.
Interesting.
Personally, when I do my independent films, I do have rehearsal with my actors, but for the most part, it's for blocking only because you don't want to be figuring things out on the day for sure. I mean, you want to have your battle plan, just like Darren said. So you go in there and you have a plan of attack. And for me, I try to, I don't even focus on the acting side of things in rehearsal. It's really just about for blocking and camera. That way when we get in there, it's still organic. The actors can, let that come to life on the day, because you don't want to get too robotic with it. If you start, delivering timing of lines and you get into sort of this formulaic approach, then it can sort of kill some of that magic on the day. So because independent films, they shoot, at least in my experience, they shoot very quickly because you're trying to maximize your dollar. I don't want to be figuring out camera and choreography and things like that in the moment. That should be dialed in. So we get there, we hit our marks, focus is in, and then we can take the time and let the acting come to life and keep it organic. Boom, we got it, move on. So it can be very beneficial, but for the right reasons, for sure.
Oh, we have one question here. He's coming.
Darren, it's not really a question, it's more kind of like a request. Do you think you can talk about your writing process a little bit?
Yeah, she asked about the writing process. I always preface every piece of advice I give with, the minute you leave here, throw it away because it's invalid. This is what works for me. It's always different for other people. There are some days that I can sit in front of a computer for some weeks and not write a single word. And then all of a sudden, overnight, I'll write 20 pages. And then there'll be a month where nothing happens. And it's frustrating because we live in I guess, a society now where there is so much stimulation around you at all times. There's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Netflix, there's iTunes. There is so much stimulation. What I find myself doing is I sit down to write, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to check out what's on Netflix. And then I'm like, I'm going to watch one episode of Portlandia. Okay, I'm going to play one video game. And then what happens is, a year and a half passes, and I realize I've gained 30 pounds, but I did beat Wolfenstein. And so what I've done now, and this is crazy, I write on typewriters, and this is a new thing for me, and I actually collect typewriters. So I have this Underwood typewriter that takes an hour to write a page, an hour. There's no backspace. I can't reverse on it because it's such an old typewriter. And what it does is it forces me to be present. It forces me to think of every letter that I write, every space that I put, and it takes time. And I think that I got so overstimulated when I was sitting in front of a computer. I literally have 2 big monitors, and I had a million things open. I was playing Minecraft on part of it. I was watching Netflix on part. I was sending emails on part, and then I was just doing nothing. So what I try to do is, my process is, I get up really early in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I will not turn the computer on. I sit in front of a typewriter. Now, I might get one page, maybe, if I'm lucky, one page out. That's up now. When I first started, I wrote my first script on X-Files, and that's why I got fired from X-Files. And don't take this advice. Just, again, throw away what I'm about to say after I say it and just call me an idiot. But I got really angry. I went to Full Sail, and I think I had an entitled thing after I left Full Sail, and learn from my mistakes. I left Full Sail and I directed the feature, or the 35mm project, and I thought I was awesome. I thought this was Citizen Kane. It was terrible. It was the worst thing anyone's ever seen, but we thought it was awesome. We walked around,
yeah.
Yeah, shut up. I thought it was awesome. And so I guess I thought that I was...
It was a musical, by the way.
It was
and that was an example of where you took a normal talking script and at the last minute made it a musical.
I did. Really, like 2 days before I turned it into a musical. But I came to Hollywood, and I was smacked down really quickly with the reality of what Hollywood's like, and it's not the glitz and glamour that you think it is. And so I thought I was going to walk into Hollywood, and people were going to open the golden gates to me, and they were going to give me, the next Star Wars movie. And I realized very quickly that no one cared. Everyone has a short film in Hollywood. Everyone has this. So one of the first jobs I got was X-Files. And I thought I spent maybe 4 months on X-Files, 3 months, and I was a PA, and I got coffee, and I literally washed cars, and I got laundry. And I started to get angry and resentful and bitter. And so I was running out of money. When Hunter and I came to LA, we came with no money in our pockets. And I was starting to get broke. And I started to get really resentful. And I finally found myself having a voice. And that voice was one of anger, one of rage. And I never came to Hollywood to make horror movies. That wasn't it. I found that voice on X-Files, being angry. And I started writing, which is a script called The Desperate, about my life, being desperate. And I sat in the corner when I should have been locking down a set, and I started writing. And I remember when I got fired from X-Files. This is actually, I shouldn't tell this story, but whatever. It was
You
the
know,
last.
that's the best story
It was the
coming.
last. It was the last season of X-Files, and Robert Patrick had replaced David Duchovny, and I was a horrible PA, and I fell asleep with my laptop on me, and we were shooting downtown LA, and a homeless person walked onto set. And Robert Patrick sees this homeless person, and he goes, "Cut!" And they go, "Who's supposed to be locking down the set?" And then they point over to me in the corner with my laptop. I'm sleeping. And then they fired me. And then I did about a year of getting like just bad PA jobs, and I got fired from them all because I was writing. And at that point, I only wrote while I was on a PA job. Now, the joke's on them because I sold that, and that became Saw 2. That script, The Desperate, became Saw 2. But again, that was 15 years ago. Now I write in front of a typewriter with all technology off and force myself. And again, months will pass and I don't write a page. And then all of a sudden, one afternoon, there's 10 pages. But everyone's process is different. But that's my process.
To get fired.
To get fired. Yeah. Yeah.
Darren, you mentioned that your assistant director was really helpful because it helps get you focused.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider collaborating on writing to get someone to?
I do. In fact, the last 2 scripts that I've sold, I've had a co-writer on it because I am so scattered. I really am. Like I'm extremely lucky right now. I mean, there's also with directing. The last time I was at Full Sail last year, I hadn't worked in 3 years. Now I did 3 movies since last year in Full Sail. And, part of the reason that I keep working is I'm so scattered and I'm doing a million different things at once. So now I have 3 movies in post-production at once. So in that thing, I guess me being scattered is helpful, but when it comes to writing, it's not helpful because I'll literally sit there, like I said, and play video games instead of writing. So I've actually collaborated on the last 3 things that I've sold with another writer, actually the writer of Mother's Day, Scott Maylen.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I find that very helpful.
Great.
Brad Bird had some great insight on the Incredibles Blu-ray. He said you can't force creativity. All you can do is put yourself in an environment where you feel creative. And that process is going to be different for everyone, whether you're playing a video game or you're watching a YouTube video or you're going on a hike. One of my good friends is Tab Murphy. Tab wrote, what put him on the map was Gorillas in the Mist, and then he wrote for Disney for many years. And he's constantly getting, approached by young upcoming writers that say, what is your approach and what is your process? He said, close the laptop, put away the notepad, lock up the typewriter, and go live life, because that's where your inspiration is going to come from. You write what you know, at least most people do. And so, just like Darren said, that became your voice, and you're going to find that voice maybe necessarily not in a laptop or on a keyboard. It might be out in the real world. It might come from this aspect of life or that aspect of a career. So it's
Find something that inspires you.
Yeah.
I did this thing, and I hit a rut. I was in a really depressed rut last year, and I ended up going to this thing in New York called Sleep No More. And if you guys haven't done it as artists, you have to do it. It's the most amazing, at least for me, it was an amazing experience. And immediately, I woke up, I felt like I was in a gaze, it's gray haze of creativity. And then I saw something that inspired me. And almost like that, something flipped inside of me, and I felt like I was back to my Saw 2 days. I felt inspired to do something again. And after doing that, I got 3 movies off the ground kind of quickly. So my other thing is find things that inspire you and surround yourself with things that inspire you.
All right. My name is Matt. I just want to know, on set, is there a difference between independent films and major feature films, on the amount of time you take for each shot and getting each shot?
I've never done a studio film, so I can't answer that. What I can say is I'm friends with James Wan, who just did Fast and Furious, the new one, and he jokingly came to one of my sets, and I had to do 8 pages in a day. And he showed me a call sheet where they had 1/8 of a page for a day, and it was just so. Yeah, there's a big difference between having to shoot 8 pages and shoot 8. I heard a story when I was shooting one of the Saw movies. Edgar Wright was shooting Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I heard a story about it. He spent a day trying to get an insert of someone dialing a phone number, and that was the day, trying to get that insert, and I realized that. There's big differences. That says that they're all the same, though. You have more time to do it, but the pressure's always there. Even on a big movie, you don't have enough time. You don't have enough time. Yeah, at least my experience. And Hunter, you've worked on much bigger things than I have.
Yeah, but everything that I've done, you're still trying to shoot 6-7 pages a day. You don't have that luxury. I mean, but now I have been on a show where they shot the same scene for 6 days.
Yeah.
Did it get better or worse?
Well, it was never complete until the end of that 6th day, and it was at night on a merry-go-round, and I was on the merry-go-round going around and around and around.
Oh my God.
I mean, on the last day, I wasn't there all 6 days. At that point, I was like, I'm going. I'm gonna go check it out.
Maybe it just felt like 6 days.
No, it was the line producer and I, because I was like, I am still getting dailies on this scene. He's like, yep, 5 days, and then we actually figured out it was 6 days.
It comes down to financial. Imagine though, if you're going to do a car crash, like if you're going to do like a huge car accident and you're going to spend, millions of dollars on one shot, you might spend 2 days setting that shot up just to get that, that 1 10-second bit of movie. So, I think it's a case-by-case basis. But I think that, you're definitely moving fast on independent films. You don't have the luxury of time.
So along the lines of this question, we have an online question. Dan Dillard asks, if a shoot drags on or if a shoot is compressed and hectic, as a director, producer, how do you keep the team motivated?
Dairy Queen is our.
Yeah, it is. No joke.
Dairy
It's our
Queen.
secret.
Dressed up in costume, we go right there.
Yep.
It's great.
And I tell them if they drip anything on their costumes, they're dead, because I have to clean it out. And I'm like, no, thank you.
That would work for me. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I got to throw in the mic. Hopefully it works. Hi, I'm Blake McGinnis, an alumni of Full Sail just from a couple months. I directed my 35 as well, and I want to be a director. I love writing, the whole story aspect, but I'm a cameraman.
Well, let me stop you. You already are a director. If you directed a 35mm film, so that's first thing I'm going to say to you. Don't ever say the words "I want to." You are. So I am a director. So rephrase your question.
I am an alumni, and I am a director. The main part of my question, first, thank you all for coming out here. It's awesome. But should I join the DGA? Is that a big thing I should do to help me get towards feature films to direct?
I didn't join the DGA until my 4th movie. Listen, the reality is that most movies that are being made right now are independent, right? Most independent films you don't need to be DGA to do. DGA is when you're doing usually it's a bigger thing, it's TV. I had to join, the Saw movies I wasn't DGA. I joined the DGA when I did a TV show called Fear Itself. But, I think what I say join the DGA, first off, you have to, it's a harder thing than just joining the DGA. You have to have prerequisites. You have to have directed a certain amount of things. I'm not even sure what they are. It's been a while since I joined it. But, I don't know. I'm glad I'm in it. It's an awesome group of people, and what they provide is a great thing. But it's not something I would worry about going out and starting off. No, I would worry about just getting a movie off the ground, starting a movie.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not that I'm in the Editors Guild, and the guild does not get me a job. It's not my barrier when I moved out to Hollywood was not. Oh, if only I could get into the union, then I would have a job. I got the job first, then got into the union.
The union will come to you when you're. It'll happen when that comes together at this crossroads.
Yeah.
It is a barrier. The guilds are a barrier to some degree, but that'll sort itself out when the job is there.
I've never not gotten a job because I wasn't DGA. If that answers your question. So,
Were I guess your initial productions, were they all with people you knew, or did it just somebody like, hey, you like movies, come over here type of thing?
How I started, my initial things? No, I didn't know them. The first 4 or 5 things I did was my group of friends. It was with Hunter and this actor Jay LaRose, who's somewhere in the audience. That was all
my wedding money paid.
Yeah,
at our film.
So right after Full Sail, we tried a Kickstarter campaign before Kickstarter, and we made these like little postcards. And we sent our postcards to all our family and asked for money. And we got like $5 here, and Grandma sent $2 there. And we compiled all the money at the very end, and we had enough for like a day of craft service. And but we were ready to shoot, and so we actually got quite a bit of money from doing that. And it still wasn't enough. So I said to Hunter, we don't have enough money to shoot. And I was like, Hunter was about to get married, so he kind of dipped into the old wedding.
Literally, tell us in our film, we couldn't get it out. Amy had to come down and write a check out of that account.
Ironically, his wife also bailed me out of jail around the same time. The vines have gotten me out of a lot of pickles. Let's just say that. I forgot what we were talking about. What was the question?
I think getting bailed out of jail is the perfect place to end. I want to thank you guys so much for attending our session today, and I especially want to thank our guests, Christopher, Darren, Hunter, Lynn, and Matt, for your passion, your humor, just all of your knowledge. You guys have been awesome, and I've had a lot of fun. Thank you. All right, guys, have a great day.
All right. Okay, so on your way out, make sure you grab all your stuff. Don't forget your phones, laptops, bags, coats, cats, dogs, Easter eggs. I'm just joking around with y'all. Make sure you got everything. If you have water bottles and stuff, if you could take them with you, throw them away, we greatly.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you for joining us online, and thanks for sticking around for this exclusive Full Sail on-air moment with our guest, Hunter Vi. We have a few pre-selected questions that you all have tweeted us that our guests will be answering just for you. So first of all, what is your favorite scary movie?
Oh, that's really tricky. I have Well, in my living room, I have a giant Italian subway poster of the original Evil Dead, so I'll go with that. It's the first words that my son spelled out. He sat there and went, E-V-I-L, so I'll go with Evil Dead.
That's going to go over well in pre-K.
Yes, exactly.
An online user asked, in episodic television, how much creative freedom do you have when editing? Is the director and the producer heavily involved in post-production?
They are heavily involved. I like to think that editing isn't necessarily just post-production, so we start when they start filming. We're a part of production, we're on the call sheet and all that kind of stuff. And as far as like independent creative freedom, we are alone for the most part while people are shooting. And occasionally you send quick times out or people come into the room, but for the most part it's pretty independent. And then as the process goes on, you know, the director will come into the room and the producers will come into the room. So I mean, it's a full collaboration going off of our panel that we just did. Yeah.
Very cool. So what's one of the most important things to keep in mind in order to have a successful career in the film industry?
One of the most important things to keep in mind to have a successful career. I would say, I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, one, be pleasant to work with so people will actually call you. But to keep things interesting for you, to not let it get boring and to keep challenging yourself, to try something new or to do it in a new way or to, you know, because you can keep doing, you're basically doing the same job over and over again, but if you can find like a whole new way to do it or learn a new trick or something like that is what I try to do every time I go out and do a new episode of television or a movie or something is, you know, don't get bored.
That's great advice. Don't get bored. Thank you so much, Hunter. It's great.